Hey guys, Austin Ramos. And this past week, even though we're in the middle of June, the Miami Dolphins kept themselves busy by adding two key defensive players to their roster. These are free agents Marcus Maye, safety, and Calais Campbell, defensive tackle. The U. Shout out to the boy. But yeah, I mean, I'm a pretty decent fan of these picks, these signings. Marcus Maye adds depth to the safety position, which was very much needed. I know a lot of fans were itching and clamoring for Justin Simmons. I think he's looking for a pretty big deal, and at this point in the offseason, it's just unlikely to happen, honestly. And I think this is the Dolphins allocating their money wisely and spreading it out. No deals, no contract details have been released yet, but I'm assuming they're not signing for much. And I wouldn't say they're signing for vet minimum, but I'm not saying they're signing for multi-million-dollar deals right now. Yeah, Marcus Maye brings much needed depth to the secondary, and this helps flex the Dolphins' options on the defensive side of the ball. Marcus Maye himself said that he had multiple teams interested, but he loves the roster of Miami and wants to be part of a Super Bowl contender, which he believes Miami has. I mean, that's, enough said there. But some people may know Marcus Maye from his time with the New York Jets and most recently his time with the New Orleans Saints. One big catalyst in Marcus Maye's career has been him being injury prone, quote unquote. First season in 2017 with the New York Jets, 16 games, full season for him, and then missed 10 games in 2018, so he only played in 6. Followed up with 2 full seasons with the Jets as well. His last season in 2021 with the Jets, only played in 6 games. Coming to the following year in 2022, he signed with the New Orleans Saints, where he played 10 games, had a pretty good year, but nothing compares to his 4th season. And then last but not least, last year he only played in 7 games, but his presence was felt for the Saints in those 7 games. Aside from that, you can see kind of a pattern there: 16, 6, 16, 16, 6, 10, 7. So not the best track record when it comes to injury, but I like what he can bring to the defensive side of the ball, and he's going to be a solid third option. On top of that, there's depth in this Dolphins defense, and the more and more Dolphins sign guys like Marcus Maye and Calais Campbell that we're going to get to in a second, more and more when they sign those guys, this is continues to add depth, experience in a much needed locker room that is relatively young. I wouldn't say they're one of the youngest teams in the NFL, but kind of mix and match with guys that are either young, old, and kind of in between in the middle of the pack. I would kind of put Marcus Maye in the middle of the pack at 31 years old. Nonetheless, solid pickup by the Miami Dolphins. I know I iterated it earlier, but I know a lot of fans, including myself a bit, wanted Justin Simmons to come to the Dolphins. But like I said, he's one of the most coveted safeties out in the market, and he has yet to sign. That's more than likely just because he's not getting the offers that he wants from certain teams, and then also just the fact that he is, wants to pick the right team. He's been in Denver for a while. He kind of got the tail end of their run with Peyton Manning there. I think he got there right after Peyton Manning left. So he didn't even get a chance to have a lot of extended football in terms of postseason, etc. So I'm pretty sure he's itching for that, and I think Miami would have been a great spot for him to land, but I don't think the financials lined up. But other teams that are looking at him are possibly New Orleans Saints, so let's see what happens there. Let's move on to Calais Campbell, the U. Shout out to the boy. He's finally made his way to the Dolphins. This is going to be his 17th season in the NFL, and last year he just got his 100th sack. So we have plenty of experience coming through with Calais Campbell coming onto the defensive line. Now, is Calais Campbell going to be an every down defensive tackle? No way. His time in Atlanta, I mean, he played all 17 games last year, but I can imagine he wasn't on the field for most downs. I'm pretty sure he was on the field for a selective amount of downs and, trying to preserve his career of what he has left in it. But he had a resurgent year, not a resurgent year, but he had a pretty good year in Atlanta. His time in Arizona was phenomenal from 2008 to 2016, just absolutely stellar, only missing a handful of games every now and then throughout his time there, but spent 8 years in Arizona, had quite some success. Jacksonville, He was the mayor of Saxonville, if any of you guys remember that. But he was there for 3 years, and then he also spent another 3 years with the Baltimore Ravens. Last year, had a pit stop with the Atlanta Falcons, and finally making his way back down to South Florida, where he had his old stomping grounds about 18 years ago with the Miami Hurricanes. But yeah, man, Calais Campbell is an absolute stud. If you don't know him, he's one, massive, two, like one of the smartest football players as a defensive tackle out there, and then three, I mean, just the production speaks for itself. I know 16 years to get 100 sacks kind of sounds a bit crazy, but when you put it in perspective, he's almost averaging 10 sacks a season. I mean, this is what you want from a guy like Calais Campbell. First year, 0 sacks. Second year, 7, 6, 8, 6.5, 9, 7, 5, 8. And then he really stepped things up when he went to Jacksonville. He had 14.5, 10.5, 6.5. Then first year with Baltimore, not so great. Second year, also not so great. But he had 4 sacks, 1.5, and then 5.5. And then last year, pretty resurgent year, 6.5 sacks. Now, do I expect him to reach that total this year with the Miami Dolphins? Not necessarily, but what I'm going to love from him is 1, his leadership, 2, his experience, and then 3, just, you know, the caliber of play that he could possibly still bring in year 17, which kind of sounds crazy to say, but I think he has it in him to do that, especially since he's reuniting with his former defensive coordinator, Anthony Weaver, that they spent time together in Baltimore. It's insane to finally see, you know, a guy like Calais Campbell come back to play in South Florida, especially in Miami, being a former Hurricane. I'm loving these 2 pickups, and just very briefly, we're gonna go and talk about what the Dolphins have lost, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and what they have added throughout this free agency and in the NFL draft. So let's start talking about the departures. We have Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, Deshaun Elliott, Brandon Jones, Xavier Howard, Jerome Baker, Raekwon Davis, and Emmanuel Ogbah. Some of these guys, like Xavier Howard, Jerome Baker, Raekwon, and Emmanuel Ogbah, all were guys who were cut. Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel, Deshaun Elliott, and Raekwon Davis are guys who were free agents and decided to go elsewhere. Now, these are some of the additions. We have Jordan Brooks, linebacker, Kendall Fuller, corner, Calais Campbell, defensive tackle, Shaq Barrett, linebacker, Tierra Tart, defensive tackle, Marcus Maye, safety, Jordan Poyer, safety, Benito Jones, defensive tackle, Neville Gamore, defensive tackle, Jonathan Harris, I forgot what position he plays, but I'm pretty sure it's D tackle, Anthony Walker Jr., linebacker, Chop Robinson, edge rusher, and Mo Camara, edge rusher as well. So I think the Dolphins had an amazing shift in their defense. I know it sounds like a lot of guys, and a lot of these guys may be pivotal playmakers for the Dolphins defense, and possibly full-time starters. Some may be rotation type of guys, but these are big-time additions. I think they're building out a defense that Anthony Weaver specifically likes. I don't think he's necessarily, you know, changing the whole entire defense, but I do think he is adding to this defense and adding to what he likes as a defensive coordinator. And none other than that, he's bringing in a former player of his in Calais Campbell to help possibly implement that system and take it to the next level. And I think he has a lot of potential to do so. So I think this is big time for the Miami Dolphins. But you can hear it from the man himself back in 2022, just speaking about what his thoughts are and what leadership Calais Campbell brings to the team, and also his intelligence on the field.
Yeah, so he's got grown man strength, right? Outside of his age. He is just a massive human being. When I stand next to the guy, I feel small, and that happens not very often at all. But outside of that, his knowledge of the game. So he can take in everything from a pre-snap perspective and use it to his advantage, where a lot of younger players can't. So some of that disruption you see is certainly his talent, but it's also just his FBI and knowing when to take those moves.
So how much do you bounce off of him?
I mean, I think that we played together in the league, so there's not many guys I can say that about. Dwayne Brown, who we're going to play with the Jets, I played with him my first year in Houston, but I have a tremendous amount of respect for Calais. So guys like him, whether it was J.J. Watts I've been around and Kyle Williams, I'm going to let them do their thing, I'm always going to refine and tweak and make sure that everything's right. You're always making sure the car's in alignment and it's going straight. But they have the things that have worked for them, and I'm just trying to make sure I can mold what we do around that.
I mean, you heard it from Anthony Weaver himself back in 2022 when he was a member of the Baltimore Ravens, when both of them were still on the same team together. And I think this is just a big move by the Miami Dolphins in general. This one also helps, like I said, implement Anthony Weaver's system. And I'm not saying it's going to be night and day from what we were having in the past couple of years, from Brian Flores' defense transitioning all the way now to most previously Vic Fangio's defense. But now I think there's going to be a different iteration of the defense that you're going to see on the field for the Miami Dolphins. And expect Calais Campbell to be the guy who takes charge in terms of leadership and, you know, helping guys see the way in terms of what Anthony Weaver wants executed. In terms of the offensive side of the ball, we've been through a lot of these moves that the Dolphins made in the offseason. And something that should be coming soon is a video specifically about Tua. Hopefully, when I make this video, the contract extension should have happened. But, you know, they have been in talks. Negotiations are still ongoing. Tua is holding out in terms of playing on the 11-11 drills, also participating in everything else except for the 11-11. Right now, it's not a big deal. But if we go into full swing in training camp and this is still going on, this is not going to be good for the Miami Dolphins. That's just my personal opinion. Deservingly so. We just saw Trevor Lawrence get a massive bag, becoming the highest paid player in the entire NFL. And now I don't expect Tua to get that much money, but the longer the Dolphins wait, the worse of a hole they're going to be in, because when you look at success and play and stats, whatever you want to put in there, you can hold Tua to a higher regard than a lot of these players that are getting big time bags. You definitely want to strike while the iron's hot and not while it's even hotter, and you're going to have to pay even more and more. So I think the Dolphins are getting themselves in a tricky spot and they need to get out of it as fast as possible. That's just my opinion on the Tua situation. But that is a whole other video for a whole nother day, but I just gave you guys a snippet. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought of the Dolphins signings with Marcus Maye and Calais Campbell. I love whenever the Dolphins bring in any guys from that were either, you know, grew up and played in high school down here in Miami, or also played for the Miami Hurricanes. So big time move for the Dolphins. Get a good thumbs up from me there. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace.